Hello everybody, this is Rock LaManna coming from Orlando. We just walked away from the Florida Graphic Association, and I'm here today to discuss the life and the services of Vince Mallardi. Vince Mallardi established the PBBA in 1973, and the PBBA stands for Printing Brokerage Buyers Association International. So I'm very excited to discuss what Vince has been doing for 5 decades. And I've been working with Vince over the last 10 years, especially on research, the fantastic research that he does. And we attended the event yesterday at the barbecue, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to take some time out to talk to Vince, talk about his 5 decades of servicing the industry and some of the things that he's done.
Well, like many people that are in the printing business, I started in printing because something else didn't work out. In my case, I was in the phonograph record business back in the day, and I became a printing salesman. Well, the first thing I learned as a printing salesman was that they don't train you how to sell. They don't tell you where to go other than to hand you, in those days, a telephone book. So I had to pretty much learn from the ropes, and having bought printing before I was selling it, I had some experience with printing buyers. Not a lot, but since then quite a bit. So I started an association for printing buyers in the early 1970s, and I felt that they should have a seat at the table with the printing industry. Many of them didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know how to judge pricing. They didn't know how to evaluate estimates. They didn't know how to spec. And I spent a fair amount of time with printing buyers as groups to teach them how to buy printing. Well, in the course of doing that, I realized that a lot of people don't know how to sell printing either, and that therefore there's still a gap. And marketing is something that people don't even use in printing. In fact, I found out that the printing industry was the second lowest industry of any industry in the United States. That's in marketing spending. That only the sand and gravel industry actually spent less on marketing than printing. So that's how I started.
All right, so after that, Vince, how did you get into all the research and the writing for the NAPCOs of the world, the top 100, the top 300, printing impressions, and all these associations and content articles? How'd you get into that?
Well, first of all, there wasn't much marketing research being going on in the printing business because printers weren't using it, didn't know how to use it, still to a large extent don't know how to use it. And therefore what was happening was they were depending on government data that was very obsolete, still is. Today in what they print, they said that last month's printing sales were $9 billion. Well, that's a very low number. It's actually 3 times that when you count packaging. And packaging is the most important, fast-growing segment in the printing industry. So we really needed an independent people to start doing forecasts, and the Printing Industry Association wasn't very good at it. So I decided that I would do that. I have a master's degree in economics. I taught in 3 universities. I know how to do market research, and I know how to do statistics, and I know how to do regression and all of these other techniques that sophisticated people do. So consequently, I got involved with all of the magazines over the years, and we produced the hot markets, the 25 largest demander groups of print. Right now, this is the last issue of the top 100 printing buyers. I'm working on the 2023 edition right now.
So what you're saying is NAPCO or Printing United, they commission you for this research and this information?
Actually, they don't commission me. What happens is they wind up being the teaser for me. So we put the top 100 printing buyers for the country, but then there's really 1,500 in a full report. And then now what's happened is a lot of printers say, well, it's great that these are the top 100 or the top 1,500 in the country, but we're operating in Omaha, Nebraska, and we don't care about that. We want to know who's around here.
So let me ask you, who's this a benefit for? Who would want this information?
Well, ironically, the printing buyers seem to be more interested in where they stand as printing buyers than the printers do. That was a surprise to me. I thought every printer would want to know who the top 1,500 printing buyers were, or top 500 in their immediate marketplace. They should be able to gauge that. Instead, as it turned out, many of the printing buyers wanted to know where they ranked, because that became somewhat of a bargaining chip for them with their employers. So consequently, there'd be contests, for example, in the Twin Cities. Does Target buy more printing than another 3M or some other company in the marketplace? So as a result, I started getting into the regional editions. I actually did a census of all of the printers and printing buyers in North Dakota and South Dakota, simply because it was easy to do. There weren't that many of them, but I traveled the state physically, looked into dumpsters at printing plants at off hours at night, an old-fashioned marketing research technique. Also interviewed samples of printing buyers, and I'm able to produce regression lines as to how much they're all buying and what the rank orders are, and who the people are that are actually doing the buying.
Well, let me ask you. So if we got printing buyers and brokers,
right,
what is the trend today? How are buyers buying, and how are there brokers still in today's world?
Yeah, I don't survey the brokers anymore, even though we have the Printing Brokerage Buyers Association, which I founded. But the brokers usually are coming into places where they don't have very many people buying printing, or they know how to buy printing. In other words, instead of it being a fixed cost of a company to have a printing buying department, it may be better to have a broker that's no load on their fixed costs, who they allow to, with their permission, make a little bit of a margin to satisfy that person's needs. So brokerage is arbitrage. It's all it is. Every industry needs arbitrage. There's no such thing as a perfect match between buyers and sellers. It's impossible. So by having an intermediary greasing the wheels kind of increases the overall demand for printing and the quality of the work that's being done.
All right, so let's talk membership.
Sure.
Why would someone become a member of the PBBA?
Well, if they're a buyer or a broker, they would want to have buying leverage. And we have purchasing power, $5 billion worth. So would you want to be a Lone Ranger going it alone, buying maybe $100,000, $200,000 a year worth of printing and paper? Or would you want to be associated with a group that buys much more than that? And for an individual broker, especially the smaller and medium-sized ones, they're crazy not to be a member, because they're leveraging with so many bigger brokers. We have some brokers that are doing $500 million a year. So we've got 5 of them.
Okay, so with that in mind, for the investment, for the benefits of the PBBA, another question would be, do you give out leads to your members?
Oh yes, that's another purpose here.
So if they call you, if they're a member and call you, they have access to your website, the database,
right,
which
right.
is huge,
yes,
right?
Yes, it's 86,000 printing buyers and brokers.
And when people have questions, or if a buyer says, Vince, they're a member, who in the Twin Cities, for an example, would be a great potential source for me? Is that
right,
how it's worked out? Okay.
And because of the pandemic and the fact that freight costs have gone up so much, the idea of printing, if you're a broker in Miami and printing a job that has to deliver to Minneapolis, let's say, you're better off printing it in Minneapolis. The only problem is that you only know printers in your local area of Miami. So we provide the assurance that they're going to be dealing with the right company in Minneapolis, and therefore they're avoiding freight altogether. But it's not only avoiding the freight, it's avoiding the time. At this time of year, especially it's winter right now, there's a storm going across the United States. There's a lot of printing that's on trucks that are just parked on the side of a snowbank. And that's not helping anybody, especially if it's dated material. And a lot of printing is dated.
I'm assuming you have connections with suppliers, paper suppliers,
all over the world,
inks, and so on.
Over the world.
Okay, so to wrap it up, what's going on with Vince Mallardi over the next 5 years?
Well, I'm trying to train some younger people to take over my market research function and use the techniques that I've developed specifically for the printing industry. And as I'm able to migrate my work to them, I'll be taking a lesser and lesser role. But the market research has to continue if the printing industry is to continue.
Do you see the trend that printing is alive and well?
Oh yeah, I think that it's a pendulum. It's an isometric relationship between print and non-print. And if we would position ourselves as print as the positive and non-print as the negative, instead of surrendering to the internet and emails and text messaging and all other social marketing, we could probably do a lot better than we're doing. But again, most printers are reactive, they're not proactive. The ones that are proactive are good clients of mine. I mean, they want to spend the money and invest the money in knowing where they sit in the marketplace.
All right, last question. How do people get a hold of you, Vince?
Very easily. Just go to pbba.org, P for printing, B for broker, B for buyer, association.org, and open up a free record. And you can put all kinds of information. You can put pictures of your kids in there if you want. And it's all free. And then once you do that, then we'll get in touch with you, or you can send an email or a text message to us.
And what's
we'll
your email? What's your email?
It's just Vince, very simply, VINCE at pbba.org.
Phone number? Your cell number?
My cell number is Hawaiian, but I'm on Eastern Time, 808-339-0880.
All right, Vince. And you also publish books. You've written books.
Yes.
And so on.
Yes,
Is that also on our website?
I write Historical Freedom on a separate site. We have PBBA-books that you can Google, and you can get through our site. And we produce books for our members and by our members. So if a broker, for example, has a book out, we can put it on our site and help him sell some. In fact, we even have Rock LaManna's book, his new book, on our site. So,
all right, Vince, we want to thank you for your services, and we look forward to seeing you in the marketplace.
Great.
God bless.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.